So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to UCD What It Takes Employability series. My name is Jenny Blake, and I'm Associate Director with the UCD Alumni Relations team. This is the third episode of our spring series, focusing on what it takes to master personal branding. This masterclass is part of the UCD Women in Leadership Conference campaign, and you can experience a taster in this session of what you'll get if you come to the conference on the 24th and 25th of February next week. Today, we'll be hearing from Carol O'Kelly, CEO of Redstorm and a UCD graduate. Carol is a passionate and pioneering marketing entrepreneur and an international keynote speaker, known worldwide. Thanks so much for volunteering your time today, Carol.
You're very welcome. Looking forward to it.
Great, good. And in this interactive session, Carol will bring us on a journey which will explain what personal branding is, what it's not, guide us through the mistakes people make, the key steps to crafting an authentic personal brand, and explore the difference between men and women when it comes to personal branding, of which there are many, I believe. I'm told there's also a little surprise at the end, which is intriguing, Carol. I'm dying to see what that surprise is.
There's always a surprise at the end with me, Jenny, always, every single time.
Loving it. So Carol will present for approximately 45 minutes, and we'll take a further 15 minutes Q&A, led by my colleague Michelle Cohen from the UCD Careers Network. Be sure to drop any questions you have into the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we'll answer as many of them as we can. As I mentioned, if you want to continue the conversation after this session, Carol is actually going to be on a mentoring circle at the UCD Women in Leadership Conference next week. So it's a great opportunity to get some real valuable face time with Carol. So finally, this session is being recorded, and if you want to revisit it, it will be available from tomorrow on our UCD Alumni YouTube channel. So Carol, without further ado, thanks again, and I'll hand over to you. I'm really looking forward to this session.
Great, Jenny, thank you very much. So let me kick off by telling you a story. I have a client, she's a client of mine at the moment, and she is, let's say, an accountant, a banker, very, very good at what she does. She's very high up. She did all her qualifications, all her certifications, and she's positioned herself in a way that she's risen through the ranks in one of what used to be, when I did commerce, the big six in Dublin. And she's very well known. And she sat back and she looked at her personal brand, and it was very difficult in a highly compliant, regulated environment to see it different. She sat back and she thought, now, what do I do that really adds value to the clients that I sit with? And she took it right back and she said, what she does is, regardless of project, regardless of what the piece of work that the client has brought her, she says, who can I, either internal or external, who can I bring in to give the best possible advice for this client? So she has branded herself as a connector. This is completely irrelevant to her qualifications, whether she's an accountant, whether she's sat her banking exams, and we'll go through it a little bit later on, whether she's motivated, a self-starter, professional, all these lovely terms that you see on LinkedIn every day of the week. She has positioned herself as a connector. And everybody who knows her name, and a lot of you will know her name, knows her as that. So she's now retired. She's probably 55 maybe. She's retired. She started a new business. So her previous brand should it be irrelevant to her new venture. But it's not, because she is again going to market as the connector. She brings teams together, she brings authorities together, she brings experts together to get the job done. So today what we're going to look at is, how can you position yourselves almost away, above, and to the side of what you actually do. I did ask on LinkedIn over the last couple of days, does anybody have any question that comes again and again between my person and my day? I've probably 7 roles in market. Is there a different brand that my friend family and relations know about me Saturday and Sunday, or whatever days you work? So these are, we're going to answer, and it'll be nice and clear. I'm always very keen that any advice that I give is very practical. So you're not going to sit here, have your lunch and kind of snooze off. You're not. You're going to have the tools at the end of this to go away and actually start to work on your own personal brand. And obviously, please feel free, connect with me on LinkedIn, email me if you've any queries, come back and let's get this piece of work done and dusted. So I'm going to share my screen. This fills me with horror every time. Let's just make sure we can do it. So this is my, I would say, my favorite personal branding quote. And I think it sort of takes you back to a level where you need to start from. Anyone can do my job, but no one can be me. And I think that is the best starting point. Like my client said before, Lisa, we call her, said before, everybody, I did a BCom, everybody is an accountant, everybody is a banker, they're working in these big, highly professional and quite homogenous environments. It's very difficult to make yourself stand out. And very often people don't like to do that. But the key differentiating factor between you and everybody else is you. And that's what you need to learn today. If you learn nothing else, learn that. This is another area that I will keep going over. People do business with people. So personal branding, if you do it really well, and you're very confident in the way you brand yourself, and I mean confident in terms of authenticity, and you believe in yourself, you can have a very impactful personal brand and be a very quiet and shy, retiring person. And that's a very important thing to say early on in this session. I always say create a personal brand with value, with relevance and impact. And I guarantee you half the people, first of all, on this call are women. And half of the women will go, oh, no, I'm not comfortable. I don't want an impactful personal brand. But you do. You want the impact of your person to be strong. You might be a quiet, shy, and retiring person, but that in itself is amazingly impactful in a world of noise. But back to this, people do business with people. Don't hide behind your job title. And don't hide behind the brand that you currently work for. Another question I got only this morning was, my whole career has been here. Now COVID has happened, and now I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Is my whole career and the brand I've created for myself, is it now utterly irrelevant? Of course it's not, because I'm doing business with the person, not with the brand. So the first thing we're going to look at in detail is, what is a personal brand? If you want to throw into the chat, and I'll see now, can I manage to get into this chat and keep an eye on it? What do you think goes into a personal brand? Because we know it's not the color, we know it's not the logo, it's not all the stuff that you see Coca-Cola is rebranding, for example. It's going to be a new logo, it's going to be a different shade of red, it's going to be a different tagline. This isn't the case with personal branding, clearly. So what is a personal brand? Do you want to throw up a few things there? What people think of you when they hear your name, I love that. Oh, you're typing up too fast for me now. What you stand for, yes. Your values, yes. Your personality, definitely. What you do, what do you associate for with, what do you associate for others with? Yes, your difference, your humanity, yes, your honesty. Your USP, okay, integrity, trust. These are fabulous. I'm going to turn that off now because I'm going to be so distracted at your brilliance. I'm going to turn myself off now. So let's look at what does go into a personal brand. And I have a little formula that's a nice, easy way for you to slot elements in. The first thing I'd say to you is it is not an elevator pitch. So I don't want to meet you and you go, hi, my name is, I am motivated, I am honest, I am trustful, I get up really early. I don't want you to tell me. I need you to show me. So if you come in and you say, okay, I've had a big think, my personal brand is energetic, it's dynamic, it's idea-centric, it's innovative, and then you're late for every meeting, you come in onto a Zoom meeting like this with a cup of coffee because you haven't had a chance to have your first morning coffee yet, you never give a good idea, you never involve people in conversations, you never pull in other people and engage them into your ideas. This all goes into what your personal brand is. And the key to building a really successful personal brand is it has to be authentic. Because if you build it on something that you're not, you can only let yourself down. Because it's very hard to be unauthentic all the time. I met somebody only recently, actually, in the golden days, you know, when you actually could meet somebody. And I had been very familiar with her work, very familiar, all online. I've read her stuff, I've had emails with her, we've been in conversation for quite a few months. And I knew what she was going to be like, and I was really impressed. And then I met her, and she came across to me, and she was sort of down here, and she was very quietly spoken. And I couldn't really understand her. She spoke a lot like this. But her brand told me that she was out there and full of energy and full of dynamism. So I was so confused whether she was going to show up dynamic or show up quiet and mousy, that I couldn't recommend her to clients. I couldn't tell her story. So your personal brand is that whole package of literally how you get up, how you show up. Now I'm going to share the best known quote on what is a personal brand. And I'd love to know in the chat if you agree with this or not. So here we go with the old technology again. Your brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. Do you agree with that? Do you like that? And if that is true, can you control that? So I'm going to turn on my chat. See, every time I turn on my chat, there's like 25 chats going on. Yeah, not really. Oh, okay, good. Not really, and I don't like it. Yes, yes, yes. I think it's true from men. I love that. That's really not from a man. Yes, it's true, and you can control it. Now, if you've left the room, though, how do you, like, are you listening at the door with the glass? Like, what are they saying about me? And you run in and go, stop, that's not what I wanted you to say. What I would suggest is, yes, that is a very big part of what your personal brand is. I leave today, you're all in your kitchen, and somebody says, what was that webinar like? And you describe it. You describe me. You describe the way I interact with people. It's very hard for me to control what you say, though, because I haven't told you anything about myself. I haven't even introduced myself yet. And I'm on about slide 4. So I haven't sat in front of you the way most people start a presentation and go, hello, my name is, and this is what I do. This is all I have achieved. Now go away and propagate that into areas of the market that would value me. I haven't done that at all. So realistically, you cannot spread my brand for me because I haven't told you anything. So yes, I would agree with Jeff Bezos. Clearly he's retiring now with 150 billion to his name, so he's doing something extremely right. But I would say it's a lot more than that. As a lot of, somebody's just saying there, I don't like it. There's a lot more to your personal brand than that. There is what they say before they come into the room. It's what they say when they see, for example, somebody posts something on LinkedIn, Carol O'Kelly is speaking at. Do you say, God, I must make time to go to that webinar. I know what she's like. A client says, what is she like? And then you can describe it. The key way that you can describe what I'm like is if I get my brand story so clear and so simple and so concise that it's easy to repeat it. We all know, certainly, you know, people of my age, I'm aging myself now, of my age, know about Rapunzel. Have you all heard about Rapunzel, let down your golden hair? I always wanted to have hair like that when I was young, and I was always like a little curly carrot top mop of a thing. Have you ever tried to tell that story and not remembered how did she get out of the castle? Was it a rope ladder that she threw down? Was it a ladder that somebody put up for her? Did the prince come inside the castle and did they both jump out the window? Oh no, she let down her golden hair. So the clearer your personal brand story is, the easier it is for me to repeat it correctly. Therefore, you are keeping complete control of what I say about you. So yes, it is what people say when you leave the room, but it is also authentically what you have carefully crafted based on a number of factors that we're going to cover in this session. So one thing I would say to you is developing your personal brand is not in any way a comfy exercise. So the first thing I would always question with any client or with anybody looking at doing this is, why on earth would you bother? Why would you want to go through that? And the real reason, and I get when we're in a room and I ask this question, we get the most random responses, but I'm just going to make it easy today. I'm going to tell you the real reason is that you add value. You make your value clear. So if I'm looking for somebody to sit on my team, if I'm looking on at hiring somebody as a job or as a consultant, I will hire somebody that I am absolutely sure will add value. And that is the key factor in developing a personal brand. It's so that people don't say, who will we hire? They say, we're looking for somebody in this space. Carol is the person, or Ria is the person, or Jenny is the person. You need to stand up and take that mind share in an impactful way, but not in a pushy, not the sort of Jack Nicholson, I'm back sort of way, in a very subtle, but very clear way. So that's the main reason you'd go through all this. How do you add value by using your personal brand? A lot of us, I certainly am in sales for a lot of my professional life. I run a marketing and communications agency. So everything I say is in some form a sale. I'm trying to sell an idea, a project, a course, a product or service from our client, our own internal products and services. But if you are a consumer, you don't necessarily buy goods and services. What do you buy though? You buy stories. We're back to the stories again. Coke is the best drink because I buy this insurance because. You buy relationships. You want somebody to say, come and buy from me, come and work with me. You're safe. I will look after you. I am good. I can bring in authority from everywhere to give you the best possible result we can offer you. The best result you will get everywhere because you know me as a person. You know what I stand for. You know what I'm like to deal with. You know how I show up. And they do buy a little bit of magic. How often have we heard, oh, do you know, I have the very guy for that. Don't worry about it. I have a guy or a gal or a girl or a lady or whatever you like to be called. So basing your personal brand on that issue of creating those stories, those relationships, that magic, and stepping away from my title is sales manager, I sell the following goods and services. So already you're going to stand out because already 95% of people working in the generic sales space do sell goods and services. So after today, no more. This is certainly a favorite phrase of mine, and I'm always called up on this slide because, as I said before, there are about 50-50 men and women in this call today. And this is always a very girly slide because I think it's extremely pretty and I love it. People always say, oh, change it, pick a different one. But it just illustrates so clearly, poppies are the most beautiful things, but they are also like me, like everybody on this call, at 4 o'clock in the morning, the most vulnerable and the most fragile things. In a field of poppies, all you see is the colour. You never see that beautiful tissue paper petals until there's one who's got a little bit more rain, a little bit more wind, a little bit more sun, and they pop up. So this is, I've been told, an extremely Australian saying. So if there's any Australians on the call, you can gladly claim this. It's not a comfortable position for a lot of Irish people certainly to take, because there's a great thing in Ireland to say, who does she think she is? I mean to say, I knew her when she was nothing. And I'm sure you've all heard this. Somebody, for example, I know my dad, who was 92, would always say, that fellow Bono from that songstress group, who does he think he is? Because he just stood out a little bit more. But you don't have to stand out as being brash. What I'm explaining is you stand out for just being brilliant, for just being a tiny bit different, and for just being really proud of who you are. But you need to know who you are, and you need to word it well, and you need to communicate it well. So do be proud of being a tall poppy, because if you're not a tall poppy, you're just down in the colour in that field, and really nobody wants to be down there. So we're going to look very quickly at some of the common mistakes that people make. And I do get pulled up on this, but it is very true, because I've worked in personal branding for a very, very long time. And the first thing I would say is men are more at fault of this than women. And the further you are in your career, the more you are at fault. So again, we need to pare it right back. People assume they know their personal brand. If you're young and you're starting out, you're more likely to say, let me consider this. How do I want to be seen? What do I want to be known for? What do I want to be known as? What are going to be my real driving factors? I've been doing what I'm doing for, as I say, an extremely long time. I qualified for my BCom, my first degree, in 1990. I'd say there was a lot of people on this call that weren't even born in 1990, dare I say. So yes, the older you get, if you're successful, if you're going up through the ranks in a company, you do tend to say, oh, I know my personal brand. Of course I do, as does everybody else. But you know they don't. Have you ever heard something back from somebody else and you went, how on earth did they get that feeling from me? Because that's totally not me. So that's the key mistake. And as I say, men are devils for it. Women are devils on the other side. They tend to say, I have 30 years experience. I'm a director on, 4 boards. But I don't want that. Don't be telling people that now, because I'm not comfortable with people knowing that. So just be aware of what camp you fall into on that one. The next one is, if you got the homework, I was saying to the girls, don't call it homework, the alumni relations team, don't call it homework. But if you have it, I know a lot of people have got back onto me with a couple of questions on what I wanted you to go through on this. Not understanding your key audiences. You can create the most amazing personal brand. It's authentic, it is valuable, it's relevant. To whom? Who are you talking to? Who is buying your communications? Who needs to know about you, and what do they need to know, and what are their pain points? So I have put in what in the homework, what are your 3 key target audiences, because you'll have lots of them. Can you be very specific? The more specific, the more niche you can be, the deeper your understanding of those people's pain points. And then look at what message you need to give to each of those individual audiences. So you might have 4 key audiences and you might have 1 message per audience. So I'm not encouraging you to sort of border on the schizophrenic so that you've got, a different personality going out to each audience, but you do need to know the audience in order to evaluate the value and the relevance. and to clarify the value and the relevance, and to really get a laser focus on that. This is back to the storytelling, failure to create a clear narrative. I started this session with a story. I'd be very happy to end this session on a story because of the pure power of telling stories. If I asked you in a week, what was the story about the girl who used to be, for example, a director in EY and now has gone out on her own? What was her personal brand? Was it the fact that she was a qualified accountant? No, it was the fact that she packaged herself as a connector. And that was her narrative. And she just kept repeating this to all her audiences. It was very easy for those audiences then to repeat that to somebody else. So if you don't have a very clear narrative or a clear storyline that you're telling, it's very difficult for other people to share that storyline. And if you do have a very clear story, you keep a tight control on what other people say and value and act on based on what you're putting out there in the marketplace. And this one is a bit of a failure of mine originally. I set up my business in 2002, so a very long time ago. I always wanted to be, you know, very corporate in my little LK Bennett dress and my heels. And that's really the positioning I just wanted, because I never was going to be like that. So I put out this personal brand where I was very corporate. I spoke in a corporate manner. I wrote in a corporate manner. I emailed in a corporate manner. I got no traction, none. And one day I went to a networking event and I came back and I said, that was dreadful. And I literally did a brain dump as a blog post. And I got all this traction and people were saying, I can actually hear you speak when I read it. I can hear you speak. So you have to be a living embodiment of your brand. If you say, I am a personable person, Irish people are great at the chat. Let it out. Be confident enough to live out your brand within the confines. We've had issues on this front, within the confines of you are a professional at the same time. So don't go absolutely mental on it. But if you say, I'm energetic, I'm an early riser, I'm dynamic, full of ideas, don't then come late to a meeting. Don't forget, you know, the proposal. Don't say, oh God, you know, I've lost this. Always be living out your brand. That's the simplest part of it, but very often it's the part that people let slip. And then looking at the steps to take, and I have a handout at the end with these in it and with a couple of different top tips for you. But this is a nice practical way for you to get going. I always suggest people do a personal 360. So look at what you like to do, what you don't like to do, what you're good at, what you do, but you're kind of weak at. Like I do my own accounts. I did them for years. It was always a point of pain for me, and it took me a long, long, long time. And when I got rid of that off my desk, I went off in a different direction, said, I'm definitely on the creative side. I love being on the creative side. So when I say a personal 360, I do encourage you to ask people. So ask people that answer into you, or ask people that you answer into. If you have a board of directors or a team of management, be quite clear and say, look, I am working on my personal brand. What is good about me? What is weak about me? And don't be hurt by it. This is a building block. The more you know now, the better the brand is going to be that you build. Craft and then tell your story and give me context. So there's no point in crafting a story, telling me the story, and then I'm left sort of wondering. Had an issue recently with somebody very, very high up in banking who started with their story, I was a lawyer. I was very high up in law. And they kind of went, and you know, kind of now I'm in banking. What I took from that was she never really cut it in law, and she's giving it another go in banking. What actually was the truth that we kind of drilled into was that she was extremely good in law. She was so good in law that she went up and up and up and up, and the bits she loved in law became obsolete in her job. She became a manager, a coordinator, and she hated it. So she moved to banking, where she got that detail, the right and wrong, the the exactitude of her work. So give me context. When she explained that, I saw massive value in her story. Please stay away from making this an elevator pitch. Don't make it sound like you've rehearsed it. Give me a bit of personality so that when you think of a strong personal brand, for example, Judi Dench or Richard Branson, if they walked into the room, you'd kind of know what they were going to be like. That's what I'm looking for. I don't want that elevator pitch. And make it easy for me to find you. If I hear about you, if I read about you, make it easy. Simple things like in LinkedIn, don't leave your LinkedIn profile address. Give me a phone number or an email that I can get onto you. Make it very obvious how I can work with you. So the key areas, there's quite a few of these, and I'm only going to touch on one or two. Actually, bear with me, I just want to check the time. I'm going to touch on one or two of these. So we've looked at what is my story, make it very clear, very concise, so that it's easy to repeat. Make it engaging, so it's easy to live through, that you can bring people with you. Now, this is a personal issue. What are my values? What do I value? I need to be able to see that to some extent, but I don't ask you ever to share those type of elements because that's a very deep-seated thing. But you do need to know them. And I don't care what they are, but you need to know what they are. What are my goals? This is obviously, if you want to go into, I really, really want to be a partner in my firm, or I really, really want to start my own business, or I'm just looking to get my first job. Those kind of goals will, of course, direct your personal brand and how you go about building that personal brand. But they'll also direct who and where your audiences sit and what level your audiences are at. So always have that in the background of your mind. I'm going to skip that for 2 secs. What am I passionate about? Because this will drive your entire career, not just your personal brand. If you're really, really passionate about something, but you're working way off left field, you will never have a good personal brand, and you really never be that confident or that happy in yourself. So have a look at what you're passionate about. And I know the word passionate is very energizing and it's very dynamic, but you could be a stamp collector who lives alone, who is truly passionate about stamps. It doesn't have to be that you're passionate about something exciting and energizing. You don't have to shout it from the rooftops, but you really need to love it. And what's my voice? And this is not, the pitch of your voice, the speed of your voice, your accent. This really is, how do you talk to people? How do you engage people? If I present to you today in my own voice, the way I am doing, if you get an email from me in 3 weeks' time, it will be in the same voice. It will be still chatty and a bit fast-paced. I always told I need to slow it down a bit. But that's my voice. I'm very open. I'm very engaging. There's never any front. There's no side to me. And I noticed this morning somebody who I did not know, who was quite high up in their industry, got onto me on LinkedIn to ask a question about today's session. And I said, oh, that's a fantastic question. And I ended it with a little X. Fantastic question. No fear. I'll answer that for you, X. And pressed go. And then I thought, I actually don't know that woman. So, I really probably should have been more professional. But that is my voice. I'm delighted you're coming to this session. Any questions? Of course I'll cover it. X as a sign off. And that's me, fully authentic. I'm going to bring you back though to the 4th point. This is a point where everybody shouts out all kinds of answers throughout a session in a room with teams or in a big conference with an audience, until I ask this question. Because this question, for some reason, makes everybody, male, female, young, old, highly qualified, only just starting, incredibly uncomfortable. What makes me remarkable? It's a human trait to be uncomfortable with that type of question. However, if I asked it in a different way, What makes you different? What is your differentiating factor? What is your USP, your unique selling point? They're easy questions. They're so easy, you know them so well because somebody else has already told you this, that they don't really emotionally engage with you. So let's turn the question on its head and ask yourself, and if you'd like to put it in the chat, I'd be only delighted, but I'm not going to even have a look at it. Truly, deep down, what makes you remarkable? Because that will be the pivot point of your personal brand. I put this in because a couple of people have said, what is the actual definition of a personal brand? It really is focusing on your target audience, picking your message, clearly communicating that message, and then projecting yourself as a thought leader. Personally, this is a quote from somebody else. I don't care for the word expert. I think it's very overused. And as we said before with the USP and the differentiating factors, people tend to sort of sit back and go, oh yeah, another expert, here we go. You know, she's probably done this for 3 months now, she's an expert. So I prefer the terms authority or thought leader or taking ownership of. So just, you know, to be aware of it for yourself. But that basically is what you're looking for within your personal brand story. Again, it's a nice practical piece for you to draft some content into over the weekend or over the next couple of weeks. The final 2 little bits of information that you need to know. When you're building your personal brand, you can create a lot of bumf around what you do and how you do it and what you're passionate about and all that kind of stuff. You need to be terribly clear yourself first. What is it you want me to know about you? What is the one piece of information? And I can't tell you what that is. But again, going back to your audience, what is it really, really important that they know? And then within your personal brand communications as a whole, what is your call to action? What do you want me to do with your personal brand? Do you want me to hire you? Do you want me to suggest you? Do you want me to work with you? Do you want me to read your content? What is it you want me to do? But it needs to be active. You need to shake me up a little bit. You don't want me to read a really good post on LinkedIn or a good blog post or read a piece in the paper about you. And then I go, great, what's next? Who is next? Will I watch something else on Netflix? I want to go, that was a really good piece. I need to talk to her. I need to work with her. I need to get her on my team. I need to follow her on Instagram. I need to physically, actively do something. You need to decide what you need to do, but I must be told because I am busy and noisy and I have a very short attention span along with everybody else. It's a very, very noisy world. To be very clear. Now, I just want to see, do I have time for descriptor words? Very quickly. Descriptor words are great as pivots for your brand. Again, I've just put a post up on LinkedIn on emotional versus functional in terms of your personal brand and the elements that you put through your brand. Try to aim for descriptor words that are emotional and that are not functional. So stay away from things like I am professional, I am motivated, I am self-driven, I am all those kind of things. Stick with the emotional words. And what I mean by descriptor words are you're lying in bed at 6 o'clock on a wet, cold February Monday morning. Pick 3 words that will get you out of that bed. So if I say, oh, it's pouring rain, I'm professional. It's not personally, it's not going to get me out of bed at all. So have a look at a couple of words that we don't want to use. We want to stay away from professional, team player, expert, motivated, all that kind of stuff. And we want to lean more towards words like curious or dynamic or brave or I want to be just a bit careful on what I say next. You need to be, I was going to say, one of these words, as a real driver. It forces you to ask questions. But my comment on this is be very careful of the formation of the word, the tense of the word. If you're interested in something or someone, you'll ask them questions. If you're interesting, you'll talk about yourself. Nobody wants that. Be a little bit careful. Again, looking at descriptor words, if you're not that sort of bubbly person, be a listener, be, again, interested in what people are saying, asking them questions, and be really courageous in what you do and in how you communicate with people. This is a very quick little formula on personal branding. Using your descriptor words. So I am interested, I am curious, and I am brave. Give me some kind of a little surprise so that you're not just another, and I'm using this term gently, just another accountant, just another banker. I'm a marketeer, just another marketeer. Reassure me that I'm the right person to work with. And that's how, really, with a very simple brand story, you create real value going forwards. And bearing in mind that it's the whole package. It's everything. It's all your touch points. It is not just your headshots or your Insta profile or the number of followers. It's the way you engage with everybody. Now, I know I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to end. And obviously, all of these slides are available to you. I'm going to end with the very last bit. I've encouraged you during this session to be very clear and concise and laser focused in your personal brand story. I've shown you the elements that go into a very good, very valuable personal brand. But there's one thing I always end with, and it's not how good you are as a personal brand. It's not the way you make people do what you want. It's not who you work with. It's not what you've said. It's not what they hear. It's this. It's how you make people feel. And if you make people feel good, safe, engaged, attractive, valuable, no matter what you do with your life, no matter what position you are building that personal brand for, I guarantee you cannot fail. So I will turn off my slide share now. And I am ready for any questions. And remember, no question is a stupid question. This is new for an awful lot of people. So if you ask what you feel might be, a basic question or something that I've already covered, please, I guarantee you that there are 20 other people on this call who are dying for you to ask that question and will be very relieved that you do. So I believe Michelle is going to take over the Q&A section. So obviously, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask.
Brilliant. And thanks very much, Carol, for your presentation. So there are lots of interesting questions coming in. I suppose we might start off with one. Somebody is just interested to hear about, in terms of expressing themselves and their brand. Say, for example, they want to portray they're really efficient, but they need to manage that in terms of what the organization can deliver. So that anxiety of over-promising, for example, but then they have to manage the expectations of what's realistic for the organization to develop. So that kind of conflict.
Yeah, that's a very common one, actually, where you do work with somebody else or with a different team and you are very constrained. I suppose the best thing to do is to build a brand where your personal sense of urgency is still there. You're promising people that you will deliver, but be very clear that it is within the confines of, I'm using my own brand, Red Storm, within the confines of Red Storm's availability of their facilities, that this type of project will take a month, although you're actually saying to yourself, I could do it in a week, and that would make me happier. But you do have to manage expectations. And if you don't manage client expectations, that comes back as a bad mark on your personal brand, because you've said, oh, I could do that in a week, that's fantastic. And then the actual company that's not available to you.
Okay, very good. There's a few questions around, like, if I'm an employee in an organization, like where do I demonstrate my brand and where do I showcase my expertise and knowledge? Like, is that, for example, on my LinkedIn profile or?
So there's a couple of, so I'll ask back a question on that one. Is that for things like internal promotion, getting involved in internal teams where they're picking, say you're doing like a cross-functional team and you're kind of going, oh, Mimi, I want to get involved in that. For that type of thing, certainly any internal networks, speaker networks, women's networks, diversity and inclusion networks, getting involved in conferences, in running workshops across your internal network. Most of the big companies now have an awful lot of internal networks. They have simple things like they have let's go running at lunchtime. They have professional networks. Get involved in as much as you possibly can and get that message out. I am engaged with KPMG, or I'm engaged with UCD, or whoever that brand is. If it's in terms of an external project or an external piece of work, again, the same thing. Get networking, get writing your blogs. LinkedIn is obviously the go-to platform for that, but make sure that your LinkedIn is very available to people. Have it at the bottom of your email. You know, get onto your IT department and say, I'd really like a link to my personal LinkedIn at the bottom of my email so that clients or people that I'm contacting regularly can clearly see, click here and get a feel for me. You need to be a little bit careful with LinkedIn. It's an awkward question as to whose real estate it is. It is actually yours, but if you're clearly, you know, we'll say UCD, and then you need to make some comment early on saying that all comments are my own. If you are going to voice your own personal brand through that goes against your corporate brand.
Great. Okay. I think, yeah, that has answered a few people's questions. Oh, this is an interesting one. Is there a way to maybe undo or change your brand if you felt you've maybe not portrayed it, or maybe you weren't aware of this early on and you haven't paid attention to it, and now you're in the same organization and you want to...
Yeah. We get this an awful lot, actually. People saying, I thought I was going one direction and I did something, and now that's become my, you know, my brand, my go-to position. It's very easy. The easiest way to do it, again, is to start telling your new brand story. You know, if you were always the late one to every meeting, start telling your new brand story by coming early, being there before the meeting starts, having stuff prepared so people can see you living out your brand. I'm always telling people, don't tell me what your brand is. Show me what your brand is. If you have one brand and you want to move to another brand, that communications might take time. But if you sit and say, oh, it's the wrong brand, like I really, you know, it's not what I wanted, and you don't really do anything, it will always stay that brand. And bear in mind, in terms of, you know, this awful term of, you know, whatever Google says is right, the younger you are, the more danger that implies, because you have more colleagues on social media platforms that are posting and tagging you. So if you do a search on somebody else's Google, not your own, somebody else's Google, and do a search just for your own name, and you'll see all the pieces that come up with you and photos and, you know, bits like mentions of you. Just think, if you were going for an interview, or you were going for you know, for a promotion in work, or you're going for a new job, are you happy with what's coming up? And if you're not, the easiest thing to do is start posting a lot of stuff along the right lines, and bit by bit Google will drop the rest down. You know, so just it's a very handy way of getting your positioning correct. Okay,
that's a brilliant tip, Carol. Thanks. Another one here. This is from somebody, I suppose, who's had quite a number of years work experience, but they've had quite a variety in their career, worked across lots of different industries in academia, e-commerce, personal services, healthcare, and they're kind of find themselves maybe in their mid-50s saying, I'm jack of all trades but master of none.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips around putting a positive spin on that?
Very definitely, very definitely. This is literally one of the most common questions. I got asked it this morning, actually, Mary, if you're there, by somebody who is very experienced in her area. That area is pivoting, and she's thinking, like, where does that leave me now? It's the same with, I work in communications. I could communicate anything, and I have communicated anything. So very often you're asked, well, what industry are you in? And I'm like, well, I'm not in an industry. I am a communicator. And that is really why I started this whole session with that story. And the story was, she was an accountant, she was a banker, but what she actually was a connector. So have a look at throughout all your jobs, all your positions, throughout all the industries, you will be known for one or two things, whether that's as a really clear communicator, you really get people on side, you're a superb manager, you get people engaged, you're very clear what you do, you bring people in, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be professionally related at all. But that is who you are, and that's where your value lies. So you might move from telecoms to I was going to say telecoms to IT, but you know, telecoms to med tech to education. It really doesn't matter, because your personal strengths are the same. And I see this too with LinkedIn, that the different jobs, the different positions, they kind of say, well, I'm not putting that job in because it's irrelevant, but your skills in that job are not irrelevant. You spent a lot of effort building those skills, and you need to be proud of those skills. And those skills will go across with you regardless of what industry you work with. It's just the product and service that changes, not you.
Okay, I think that has probably answered a few questions for a few people, because one person had just mentioned that, and maybe the topic of personal branding is new to their particular sector. Like, they thought of personal branding as for YouTubers and the fashion industry. But now trying to apply the notion of personal branding to archaeology or to a researcher or a scientist. But I guess that's you've kind of, what you're saying there is across all sectors, really.
Well, I think the damage is done really when you Google the term personal branding, because when you Google personal branding, the only hits you get are headshots, how to increase your followers, what is your Instagram tag. It's all that very front end stuff, but you can't put your message across. You can't tell me who you are and what the value you bring until you know that yourself. So as I referenced earlier, you could be a stamp collector for all I care, with the strongest personal brand you've ever seen. And I'll give you a giggle, because I Googled, I was looking, somebody was asking me last week for examples of very strong female personal brands. And I was thinking people like Michelle Obama, you know, she walks into the room, you know what she's going to be like to deal with, you know what she's going to be like as a person, good or bad. Do you know, there's no, like, you might not like her, you might not like what she stands for, but it's very clear. So I Googled strong female personal branding, and the first three whole pages of Google was Barbie. So seemingly Barbie has the strongest possible personal brand. If Barbie can have a personal brand, an archaeologist can certainly have a personal brand.
Okay, brilliant. Interesting questions for the times we're in now, in terms of the challenge where somebody is conscious of building their brand like face to face, but they're working from home now and feel those opportunities are reduced. So looking at the virtual sphere in terms of brand building, I guess they're just thinking, is it just LinkedIn, or is there anything else I can do?
No, there's loads. And, you know, I actually find that personal branding is much stronger in these times. Maybe because a lot of people are sitting back and pivoting. They're kind of saying, well, you know, I was on that career path, and now I'm not really so sure. I could look at something else. But I do find, I mean, there's 300 and something people on this call today. It's almost like I'm talking to you one-to-one. My personal brand is probably stronger now than it would be if there was 300 people in a room. And I do think you have to step up and over this feeling of, you know, am I wearing furry socks? Am I only half dressed? Have I got a cup of tea beside me? You know, all this kind of stuff. Make the effort to make that personal brand really clear. And remember what we were saying earlier about the voice. So every email you send, it's no longer, oh, I'll meet you at the networking event. The email now is the focus point. So make sure that that voice is very clear, very engaging. It really shows clearly what your personal brand is about. And make the effort, step up. Like, this is the only time that everybody pretty much is working from home, certainly, you know, in Ireland at the moment. Take the time to go and have a look at who these people are. Who are the real game changers for you? Who are the real key power audiences for you? and go and contact them and hop on a call and say, just you and me, Michelle, on this call, you know, let me tell you about you. Can I ask you a question? And suddenly I just find that the contact is much tighter now, because I can't sit in a busy cafe and chat to you.
Okay, perfect.
So I'd say actually the opposite is happening.
Excellent. Okay, so I think that's probably reassuring for some of the questions that are coming in here, especially some people are around, you know, being introvert maybe and having to the idea that personal branding maybe seems a little bit daunting. So I think that's very reassuring, Carol. I think we have time maybe just for one more question. This is a very short one. Like any social media platforms, like a professional image is really, really important. So would you find that you're not inclined to connect with people if they don't have a headshot, for example? That's just...
Do you mean in LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Or I wouldn't go near them. I would say to you, like, would you go to a networking event? And I always say this to people, would you go to a networking event in the olden days when we could go to a networking event? And would you go and try and do business with somebody who's wearing a bag over their head? Like, no, you wouldn't. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're like. And then you see the little egg, you know, the little LinkedIn egg. I would always say, no, show me your face. Show me, and also on LinkedIn, you know, show me your personality very, very early on. Like in the very first line of your profile, use a tone of voice that I would know, and don't ever start, I am highly professional, 20 years experience. Get away from that. Like, that is a tick in the box. I assume, you know, if you've got that job, I assume you have that. If you have to tell me that, it makes me anxious. Like, why do you need to tell me that? Because that's taken as a given. That's a tick in the box. So be as open. I would always say with your personal brand, be as much you as you can be within a professional environment. LinkedIn is the chamber of commerce of social media. So you are, you know, I am wearing, you know, a silk shirt today. I do have my backdrop up. I have makeup on. It is, you know, a little bit more professional than the chats that you get on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. So bear that in mind. But I do need to know the type of person you are, because if I don't, I'm not going to choose you.
Sure.
You know?
Thank you so much. I think the presentation and your very frank answers to all the questions have been really, really helpful. So thank you very much, Carol. And I'm going to hand to Jenny.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just before Jenny does her finish, I'm going to give my surprise. Is that okay? Okay.
I was just going to bring it up. Go for it.
Oh, really? Okay, because I just saw somebody going, what's the surprise? So thank you very much, Michelle, for running the Q&A there. That was great. So the surprise is, because personal branding is new to a lot of people, and it does sound like I'm recommending that you get out there and you're a little bit more, you know, open about yourself, a little bit more vulnerable. It's not always that easy to do. So at the very end of this session, there always is, and it comes from UCD Alumni, there's a seminar survey, forgot the word, survey that comes up. So for everybody who fills in the survey, we're going to put you in a hat, and then one person is going to win a personal brand evaluation with me. It's about 1.5 hours to 2 hours long, and we'll get you well and truly set up with your personal brand if you have any worries at all. So that's the little surprise at the end. And obviously, you know, please do link in with me on LinkedIn. And if you want to send me on your personal brand story after you've had a chance, please do. I'm very happy to have a little look at it and you know, come back to you with a bit of feedback. So.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Carol.
You're very welcome.
That session was, I was just glued from the start to the finish, and the chat was on fire. So I think it's fair to say most people enjoyed it. We're getting great feedback. And thank you so much for the offer of that session. That is a wonderful
my pleasure.
offer.
My pleasure.
I'd say our survey respondents will increase. We'll have a few more than we usually have anyway. So that's brilliant. Well, listen, and thanks so much to you as well, Michelle. If you're still on the call, from the Careers Network, for fielding that very busy Q&A session. And as always, there were more questions than could be answered in that time. So as I've mentioned earlier, you can meet Carol at the UCD Women in Leadership Conference next week as she's heading up a mentor circle. You can also connect with her on LinkedIn. Make sure to have your photo on, because
make sure you have your photo on.
accept.
And every day this week between today and the start of the conference, we're going to be doing a little one key driver a day to build your personal brand. So, you know, you'll add more and more information based on what we've covered today.
Fabulous. And that's on LinkedIn, is it, Carol?
That's on LinkedIn, on my personal profile on LinkedIn.
Brilliant.
So click in.
And that LinkedIn profile has been linked in the chat there, so you can find Carol there.
Thank you.
You can also find the slides for today's presentation, as well as loads of other resources on the resource hub on the UCD Alumni Network. That link is also being posted in the chat here. It's also been recorded, so you can catch it on the UCD Alumni Relations YouTube channel as of tomorrow. Just looking ahead, there are a couple of events coming up. I already mentioned the Women in Leadership Conference next week, the 24th and 25th. That link should be posted in the chat there too. We also have episode 4 of What It Takes, which is taking place in 2 weeks' time. That episode is called What It Takes to Start Your Own Business, and it's taking place, as I mentioned, Wednesday, 3rd of March at 6 p.m. So it's an evening one. We hope to see you there. Just to mention on the UCD Careers Network, thanks again, Michelle, for being here today. If you are a student or if you've graduated in the last couple of years, you can take advantage of all of a consultation with the UCD Careers Network if you're looking for any advice there in your careers. There are also tons of events that UCD Careers Network run to support the employability of students and alumni. So finally, this series aims to support our UCD community with career development opportunities, but I'd also like to mention our commitment to supporting our students through the COVID crisis. Generous funds have been raised thanks to alumni and friends of UCD like you. If you'd like to support our efforts to provide urgent financial and mental health support to those students who are really struggling at the moment, you can visit the link which has been posted in the chat here at the moment. So thanks to all of you for being here. Thank you for your engagement and your involvement. As I said, the chat and the Q&A was absolutely fabulous to see all of the questions coming in. But thanks to you again, and I hope you enjoyed the session, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.